It's finally time for my big comparison between the best phones at around $300, and the intro will be quite long, but just before that I want to give you a warning or kind of a tip. Sit back, relax, because this video will take quite a while. I'm pretty sure it will be my longest kind of comparison or review video ever. So that's why you maybe can make use of the time codes, but don't expect me to answer anything that will be answered here, because I will get into everything about these phones. But I also therefore just have to make a little bit of a longer intro, and if things go a little bit crazy throughout, it can happen, because I'm pretty sure this video will get extremely long because there is so much to cover. But I get this question asked so many times: should I get the Huawei P10 Lite? Should I get the Nova maybe instead? Or should I get the Honor 8 or the A5 2017 or the Moto G5 Plus? And there is so much to talk about it, because depending on where you are, the price differences could be quite big. Because, for example, in the US, something like the Moto G5 Plus is pretty much the one you should go for, because it's way more cheap or way more affordable than all the other ones. But in other regions, the prices are just different. I can't consider all of these. I have to go from mine. So let's actually start off with the competitors and why I chose this and why it's not up to 300, but I said around 300, maybe like up to 350, because there are some phones, like for example the A5 2017, that I had to cover here. I wanted to, because I get this question so many times and it just didn't quite fit the market, and I think sometimes it's worth maybe paying a little bit more. So let's get into the first things, and I have a lot of notes and I will have to look at them to get through this video without anything, because I will make a rating for every category that I usually cover. And just to not completely talk bollocks. Okay, let's have it further. The first one in line for the review would be the Huawei Nova. That's a 5-incher. That's the only 5-incher here in the comparison. Otherwise, we are at around 5.2. But I wanted to include this because just of the premium in and feel, the price is pretty much now in line with those, actually a little bit cheaper. So it had to be there, and I get quite often asked for this, especially since Nougat, it actually improved noticeably. So this is the first one. Costs here at around, I would say, I think 280 euros. The next one on my list would be the Huawei P10 Lite. Price is, I think, it already about 300 by now, if I'm not completely wrong. I get asked about this one quite a lot, and especially I have to say, in this comparison, I did not think it would stack up that good. It actually is on top on some of the lists. Okay, the next one would be the Honor 8. This one just has to be there because on flash sale it's sometimes even available under $300. Here it's usually at 350 euros, but quite often you can get it for 300 as well. So this has to be on the list as well. Then we have the Nubia Z11 Mini S, which is unfortunately the only phone that I didn't get, and therefore I have kind of a replacement. The HTC, what is it called? The Desire. This will just be a placeholder for the video to show up the rating, but I tried my best. I waited way more than a week to get it, but I just couldn't get that, so unfortunately that. Then we have the Samsung Galaxy A5 2017. Definitely deserves to be on that list as well. And then the Moto G5 Plus. What I also want to do, just right up front, a thanks to Honor for the Honor, a thanks to Cyberport for, I think I got the P10 from them, and the Samsung and the Moto. So otherwise, and of course, thanks to Nubia, even though I didn't get that, but should we already start with it? Because I got to the pricing, I got to tell you why. I get asked so much about these, so let's jump already into the first category, which would be design. Let's put them all on the screen, and I'm actually quite happy that I get most of them in the frame without having to change the lens, because this one has just a way better quality. Okay, I would say a quick size comparison. Of course, the Nova will be noticeably smaller than the rest, but I have to say this is still absolutely my pretty much perfect device in terms of design, because it feels so amazing. Pretty much the best build ever. A great fingerprint reader, very reliable one, absolutely. This is so, I will put this to the side, but otherwise, let's get to the Moto G5 Plus. This for me on my list will be the last place, just for one reason. It's noticeably bigger than the rest, because if you compare it here, as you can see, it is taller, it is wider, it is thicker. So it is the least compact one, because if you compare the rest with each other, for example, the P10 Lite with the Honor, as you can see, almost the same, a little bit wider though, but these are actually quite close. Of course, also look quite similar, but then, for example, also here, once again, as you can see, how much narrower it is. So yeah, definitely the biggest one. So I will actually go through every single one a little bit so we can get a little bit of few of the aspects from design. But like I said, this will take some time. So design wise, I will always rate them from the last place to the first place. So the last place for me goes to the G5 Plus because it doesn't feel cheap. It actually feels very nicely built with the metal back, but it's just the widest and a little bit least comfortable one to hold. It just doesn't feel as premium. The fingerprint reader vibrates, which is a little bit something that I don't like so much, but it reacts quite good and it is very reliable. So this one gets the least place. But I also have to say one thing. All of these phones I can easily recommend without any issues at all. And that's why the differences, if I say this one is better than the other, are still marginal. So please don't confuse being the last place being something bad. Now, like I said, I don't have the Z11 Mini S, but that would be the next on the list just because it's almost as wide as the Moto, but it feels way more premium. The next on my list would be the Samsung Galaxy A5 2017, and that one actually mostly due to the just weaker fingerprint reader, because that one is just not that fast and doesn't react all that well. But I have to say, I like the glass back, I like the curves, it feels great. A lot of people though say that it is an ugly phone. I don't get quite why, because I don't think too many people said the Samsung Galaxy S7 was ugly, but they say this one is what just doesn't make so much sense for me, because I think it feels great, feels premium. It's just the fingerprint reader that I like so much, and maybe like the button placement and so on. But otherwise, absolutely greatly built, and I still love the in-hand feel. The next on my list would be the Huawei P10 Lite. Looks a lot like the Samsung Galaxy A5 2016. I said it already. Great build. I like that. I like the tactile buttons. Fingerprint reader is top. Absolutely, I absolutely love that. And I have to say, this one actually feels quite compact, great in-hand feel, everything top. So this one is actually one of my most favorite ones, even though it's a little bit surprising. Then the Honor 8. That one gets the second place because compared to the Huawei P10 Lite, it has also the press, as you can see, you can press the button, the fingerprint reader. It works even a little bit faster in terms of screen on time. So the fingerprint reader is even a little bit better. I just think it looks slightly nicer. Also glass though. All of them have a nice oleophobic coating. Feels great. Notification LED is available on all of them besides the Samsung Galaxy A5 2017. But I still love this one. It feels great. It's nice and compact. The buttons are great. Just the joy. But as already said, my absolute number one, the Huawei Nova. Great curves on the side. It feels so extremely premium. The fingerprint reader maybe isn't quite as good as on the Honor, but just the even more compact feel with the ever so slight little curve here. And the overall amazing design just makes it my number one. Now, let's get into the display, which would be the second category. And the last place here, once again, goes to the Moto. Let me actually try to get a picture on all of these at the same, so you can just maybe get a little bit of a glance how they stack up each other. Because what I also have to just mention is the following thing. The ones towards the outside will actually look already a little bit weaker due to the viewing angles, because they aren't quite straight up front like the other ones. So not 100% of course comparable, but just so we get a little bit of a glimpse of how they stack up side by side. But I will tell you my thinking or my rating in just a second. I should have maybe prepared this a little bit earlier. And I'm not going to show off too much because I want to talk and tell you my differences, because I can't really show this off over the screen anyways. So, okay, so here we have them all side by side. And let me actually put them, and I didn't do it yet, in the order that they will do in terms of ratings. So last place goes to the Moto G5 Plus, because if we get the same picture, or let's take actually this picture, because I really like this in terms of saturation and so on. You can see that really nicely here. So you have the same picture, all of them side by side. Last place for me goes to the Moto G5 Plus, for the main reason that it's just the weirdest calibrated display. Because in terms of quality, it actually is nice, but what you can maybe see, not so much visible in this picture, but it has a quite visible red tint. It also has a quite odd white, and it just doesn't quite stack up with the rest. In terms of maximum brightness, actually I measured that, but for some reason I don't know where I wrote that down. Let me actually know it. Okay, so the Moto G5 Plus, 470 lux of maximum but it's the last place. Let me quickly get that right. Yes, okay, then the next place, and I will just give that the second place, or the fourth, let's say second last place, because I don't have it here. That would be the Z11 Mini S, but it has the noticeable better screen compared to the Moto G5 Plus, but since I couldn't compare them, I just have to kind of not give it the benefit of the doubt and give it the least place. The next would be the Honor 8, which sounds weird because it's kind of the most flagshipy phone, but it's just not the case, because I've noticed, especially if you are in the browser, that the contrast isn't quite as strong, and some colors, especially gray compared to black and so on, doesn't stand out so much as on the other ones. So that's why I actually still think it's a great screen with about a maximum brightness of 530 lux. It just didn't quite convince me, but this is not saying that this is bad, just that the rest here is absolutely fantastic. And then the next already in terms of display would be the Huawei Nova. That one had a brightness of 470 lux, which would be this one. So we should put that here, I guess. But I still have to say I really like that. And it's just compared to the other ones, which I have to kind of put aside. Because this is the last place, then this, then this. And these two are a little bit separate, because these are pretty much the best you can get at this price range in terms of overall quality for what it is, because this is an absolutely amazing AMOLED display. Super nice, super bright. With that one has 570 lux, 590, where the Huawei P10 Lite has even 600. So beautiful display, beautiful sharpness, great everything. And the P10 Lite actually surprised me being that strong, because it has such a great contrast, especially if you go, for example, here in Flamingo, you can see the great contrast compared to, for example, if we check that with the Honor, where kind of the font doesn't stand out so noticeable. I don't think that's visible on the video so much, but this would be in my rating, because otherwise all of them are nice screens. The only one that, for my opinion, falls a little bit short is the Moto G5 Plus. A little bit underwhelming. I would not really like this one to be as my daily driver, because it felt so cold, so red, and so wrong. These two I could definitely join, especially maybe I should put this one a little bit extra, because this one is actually quite close almost to these two, but these two are absolutely superb. Now let's get into the next category. That one would be sound. And I will give you a single demo for every device, but just keep one thing in mind, since none of them have the same kind of conditions, it could sound a little bit different, but I did my actual volume measurements, and let me actually start off with the weakest one first, which would be, in this case, the Samsung Galaxy A5 2017. And before you flip out, the reason therefore is just because I don't like the positioning so much, but with a maximum volume, and all had the same distance and all had the same conditions, this one got 78.6 decibels. So, quick demo. So don't get me wrong, the speaker absolutely does its job absolutely fine, but the position is just not great, and it otherwise would be quite okay, so no real issues here otherwise. Now, the next one, if I check my list, would be the Nubia Z11 Mini S that I can show. I couldn't measure that, so that's why I just have to give it that, but I know it's a little bit better than the A5. The next one, which actually was a little bit disappointing for me, was the Honor 8 with a maximum volume of 81 decibels, so a little bit louder than the A5 2017, but that could be due to the slightly better positioning of the speaker, but it doesn't really sound all that amazing either. So like I said, yeah, I don't think, I think the first time I was actually more impressed by it, but by now it sounds a little bit shallow actually. It still sounds a little bit better than the A5, but not by a whole lot, and that's why it's that place. The next place goes to the Moto G5 Plus, which has the lowest decibels with just 79, but I guess that could be because it just didn't have the advantage to reflect. But otherwise I still have to give it a sound try. I mean, don't get me wrong, the sound is still absolutely fine and I like that it's front firing, but since it's not quite able to reflect, phones that usually just by their own reflect just have the tendency to sound a little bit richer actually. And that's why the next place goes to the Huawei Nova, which actually surprised me with a maximum volume of 84.3, which was actually the loudest of these phones in general. Okay, one thing that you maybe could notice already, this is the only one that sounds maybe a little bit more aggressive towards the high, so a little bit harsh, but quite loud, and I definitely like the sound still. A little bit of a richer sound would have been nice, and the quite easy win goes to the P10 Lite with 83.6 decibels, so not quite as loud as the Nova, but it sounded way richer and way nicer. And I think it is quite obvious, because if you hear them all side by side maybe, and I did a lot of checking and so on, the Huawei P10 Lite by far was the most nicest sounding one. It was quite bright, quite clear, the clarity was great, so I really like that. If I would have to give someone, I would say all get the job done. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now about the headphone jack quality. The Nova is the only one that kinda slightly falls up a little bit behind the rest. It was just not as loud, it sounded a little bit boring, so that one is a little bit with a little bit of a respect to the other ones farther behind. Then the Honor 8 and the Huawei P10 Lite are pretty much on par, and that is kind of what I always like to call out average. These sound like almost every other phone on the market. Then we have the Nubia Z11 Mini S. I'm not quite sure, maybe that would actually fit a little bit even higher, but I definitely know that it was way above average and it sounded actually quite nice with some extra options and so on, but not quite those, I think some other ones, but at least easy on that. The only two that are better is the Moto G5 Plus, which is not quite as loud and full and rich and high quality sounding as the A5 2017, and the A5 2017 has the benefit or the advantage that it also has a system-wide equalizer and some minor options which we don't have here, because here we have a quite absolutely nice sound, also louder than the average, but you don't have really any flexibility to change anything here. So the next part is actually the most hard to choose a winner. And also, just because I would actually say all of these are absolutely surprisingly well in terms of performance. And I actually did not expect that so much. And I'm pleasantly surprised that, yes, there are some different kind of tiers. Because if I would have to give it the last place, it would be the P10 Lite. But like I said, the differences are so minor, so negligible that it doesn't matter, because as you can see here, this also runs super smooth. It's the only phone that felt just a little bit sluggish in terms of multitasking, which shouldn't make so much sense because it has quite a lot of RAM actually. If I'm not wrong here, and please don't correct me, this one should have, I think checked it, yeah, 4 GB of RAM, so I am fine. 4 gigs of RAM, but you can store up quite a lot, but it gets a little bit sluggish once you do it too often, multitasking and so on. But wonderful in terms of browsing performance, in terms of apps smoothness and so on, but it feels ever so slightly slower, but therefore very smooth, but still easily one of the nicer ones in terms of performance out on the market. Now the next place is actually a three-way fight with the Moto G5 Plus, the Nova, and the Z11 Mini S that I don't have here, because all of them use the Snapdragon 625. All of them are pretty much on the same term in terms of performance. What I noticed though is, what I really like is that now with the Nougat update on the Nova, this one actually feels ever so slightly maybe the nicest one, because it still has the slightly tweaked scrolling from Huawei side, but now it's super smooth. It performs way more consistent than it did before. It falls maybe a little bit behind, for example, like to the Nubia Z11 with just 3 gigs of RAM. And Google Plus is never something that really works all that well on a Huawei phone, but as you can see here, super nice and smooth, and I like the performance absolutely, which is pretty much on par with the G5 Plus, and the Z11 Mini S was pretty much just as good as that. So these are so close, using the same SoC, that I can't really choose a winner here. Now the next place is the Honor 8, which was actually surprising for me, because without my direct side comparison, I would have actually given that the win. But my little bit of a complaint here is that there is quite a lot of motion blur visible, but it's a super lightweight phone. It's very kind of snappy a little bit. Sometimes the digitizer doesn't respond just that well, which is an issue. I have to really quickly remark that to the Nova. Because if I use SwiftKey and I want to have my left swipe gesture to delete the word, this is the only phone like in this comparison that has the issue that it doesn't just work out. I had, I think, like 2 or 3 phones that had this issue. Unfortunately, the Nova that I like so much has this. If you don't use that, it's not a problem. But as you can see here, the Honor 8 still performs so nice and smooth and lightweight and great. It's just a little bit more blurry and it performs great. As you can also see with 4 gigs of RAM, the multitasking is great. And it is super close, and I know it sounds weird that I give the win in terms of performance to the Samsung. And yeah, it just due to the AMOLED feels a little bit smoother. The higher refresh rate is, I think, noticeable in my opinion. It performs super nice. Yeah, maybe multitasking is not all that great since TouchWiz, or call it whatever you want, Samsung, just isn't able to always perform on the perfect level in terms of RAM management and so on, but it's such a nice smooth experience in the browser, in apps. As you can see here, scrolling is great. I would still say that the multitasking is fine and everything else, and this or this could be, so these are kind of the a little bit better ones. Then there is the 625 region, and then the P10 Lite slightly behind, but this one is, I just have to say, the great performer. Now in terms of gaming, I completely forgot actually to write that down, but here is what I think, because I would say these two are the best ones. I won't really give a place number 1 or 2 because both perform really great for games. It's so close that it doesn't really matter. And then we have the other ones with the Snapdragon 625 that maybe are the next best ones, and then the P10 Lite. I got some flack. For example, people are telling me that the Mali GPU on the P10 Lite is crap, the GPU isn't good, and I've seen this in other reviews, but I don't see it because side by side it looks pretty much identical to the Snapdragon 625 phones. So in my opinion, it performs great. If you want to play games very often, very long, these two are the better ones, but therefore the other ones have the upper hand in terms of battery, because that's actually the next part that I want to already get to. So the 2 weakest ones, and already I have to say these two are also very good, are the Honor 8, charge time of about 1 hour and 30, and 1 hour and 40 on the P10 Lite. Both are so close in terms of battery life that I just kind of have to give the same, because I would say about 4.5 hours on mobile data. And I know the first time that I used the Nova, the Huawei on the Honor 8, it was actually way better. Maybe because of Nougat or something else it changed, but now these would be the next two good ones. If you want some more details, maybe check my specific reviews, but expect about 4.5 hours on mobile data. Of course, noticeably more, like maybe 6 or 7, like so, on Wi-Fi. The next two would be the Huawei Nova, which for some reason, even though it has a Snapdragon 625 and it has also a 3020 milliamp hour battery, should actually be at least on top on the other ones, or it's very, very close. But the one time that I reviewed it back then, I got a little bit weaker values. So I would say like, I think 6 hours maybe on mobile data, or 5 hours I would say maybe. But I just didn't have the time to re-review it now with Nougat. So I'm not quite sure about this one. So please don't be too hard on it. It is a very good performance in terms of battery life, maybe even great. I just can't say so much how it behaves now, especially with EMUI 5. I had the issue that I had standby drain issues in general on all the Huawei phones. Then we have, in between the Snapdragon 625 phones, the Samsung Galaxy A520, because with that one, about 5.5 hours of screen on time, like 8 hours on Wi-Fi, and that is a great performer otherwise. But to just get to the two best ones, the Moto G5 Plus and the Nubia Z11 Mini S that I don't have, about 6 hours if I'm not wrong, or even a little bit more on mobile data, but up to 10 hours, around 10 hours on Wi-Fi just makes them the strongest one. And as I said, since this one has the same battery size and actually a little bit of a smaller display and the same SoC, it should in theory actually perform at just as good. Like I said, I just can't confirm that anymore, but this is what it is. Just in terms of charging times, just to cover that, the Huawei Nova needs 2 hours and 5, which is a little bit unfortunately longer than the rest. Then the Samsung has 1 hour and 25, which makes it the quickest one, but not by much. Then the Nubia Z11 Mini S, 2 hours and 25. That one falls a little bit behind. For some reason, maybe with a different charge, it could be quicker. And the Moto G5 Plus, 1 hour and 50. Now, software is something that I won't really show off because Okay, let's quickly cover that. These three here are my, let's say just on this list, the least favorite, because all of them are pretty much running the same now with EMUI 5.0. If I quickly want to check that, of course, we have here the quick shortcuts and so on. We now have the option for an app or an app drawer. Quick settings are customizable. The themes now work better. We have some extra functionality like changing the buttons and so on. So it is definitely a capable software, but at least on EMUI 5, I have some minor issues, or maybe even bigger issues with the standby drain, which puts them just a little bit on the backside, because also some issues like, for example, on the Nova, we have the issue with the screen dimming. As you can see here, it did now, and it does it again, because if you open, as you can see now, it's a bright screen. If you open the browser, it dims, and you can see now it brightens up again. I have actually a fix for that. I will post it in a separate video, because the Huawei P10 and P10 Plus have the same issue. I found a kind of workaround for that, but just because of some quirkiness and RAM management and so on, these are the least ones. Then we have the Moto G5 Plus. I guess everyone will like this one so much because it's a very stock-like experience here with the draw, the quick settings and so on, all the features that are pretty much stock-like with some extra options like the gestures and so on. But it's a very bare minimum system. I'm not the biggest fan of a stock Android device by now, but I know a lot of people will like it. Now, the first and second place, which is pretty much the first for both, is Nubia Z11 Mini S and the A5 2017. And both of them are not perfect, because the A5 2017 is still running on Marshmallow. All the four here that you can see are already running Nougat, and the Nubia Mini 11S did also not have that. But therefore they have the benefit of not a standby drain issue that I've seen so far on almost any Nougat phone. So not here available, and I don't really see any extra functionality that I get with Nougat, because I have split screen view already here, even though it's not the Nougat one, and already on the Nubia as well. And I have to say, just in terms of design, overall features and so on, I prefer Nubia's UI and the one from Samsung over the rest here. Even though it's a little bit back behind in terms of some features and so on, it's maybe not the fastest one in terms of updates and security updates and so on. But I'm just telling you what I see in my daily use experience, and this is just what I've noticed, what I prefer. But you can definitely tell me what you think. Now let's get into the camera, and this could be something that could take up ages to actually cover, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But just real quick, I should get from the last place first, so let me quickly get that back so I can properly do this. The last place for me in terms of selfies is the Huawei Nova, the Honor 8, because as you can see, pics look a little bit pale. The sharpness is actually not bad, but it works out better, but for some reason it feels a little bit dull, a little bit boring to me. Not the nicest one, but still absolutely nice, so not a real issue. Now let's get to the next place. That would be the Huawei P10 Lite. But I have to actually say this one has a quite nice one, as you can see. Also not super sharp, but I just like the little bit more contrasty look, and it just feels a tad little nicer to me overall. As you can see here, absolutely, I just like that. I can't really say anything else. It really performs, but the problem is that the rest of the other cams are just so great. Because if you quickly check the Moto G5 Plus, absolutely nice sharpness, great details, nice color balance. So it definitely knows to perform. The issue I have still with the burst shot, that as you can see here, I still get kind of like the same shot twice. That just happens too often, and it's not a bad one. But now the next ones would be the actual highlights, because the next in line would be the Huawei Nova, that in my opinion has an absolutely excellent one. As you can see, amazing sharpness, colors look nice, great contrast, sharpness, details, exposure, everything really nice. And even indoors, it manages to pretty much be intact in terms of that. Then the next one would be the Z11 Mini S. Since I didn't have that one, the pics are not exactly the same, but as you can see, amazing, brilliant sharpness, great contrast, great exposure. It looks so, this is kind of actually almost my favorite, because it fully delivers. Even indoors, as you can see, pretty much just as good, and one of the best selfie cams that I've seen in a long time. And for some reason, even though I've seen so much flack, I will give the first place to the A5 2017, because as you can see here, super nice and sharp, and especially the detail here on my forehead. And the overall color accuracy, the exposure is, in my opinion, just the very best one. And That's why that one gets the first place. I absolutely love this. It's a great camera. Not always, and some people seem to have issues with the focus because it's a fixed one and you have to kind of be in the proper length, but this is what I've seen. Now in terms of photos, here let's start off with and I know this will kind of start a lot of confusion here, but my kind of last place goes to the Honor 8, which sounds weird, I get that, but for some reason the pics don't look super sharp. They look very nice, absolutely, but ever so slightly softened out and a little bit on the paler side. Maybe they are correct, more accurate, and I just have to tell you my experience, and even though it has a great shutter, fast and everything else, I just found the other pictures to be a little bit more pleasant, because the next one, which is pretty much on par with that one, is the A5 2017, because as you can see, quite a lot of nice shots, but also a little bit pale actually, but very nice natural, actually a little bit sharper, so I slightly prefer that actually even over the Honor 8. And I guess with manual options and so on, the Honor 8 could have the upper hand, but I used, just to make it easier for me to get this done in one shot, the Honor 8 just delivered a weaker experience, just with auto and all those settings. The next place then would be, let me quickly check that, the Moto G5 Plus. And that one only for the reason that I have issues with the autofocus, because too many, and you can see this too many times, it just doesn't get in focus. But once it does, you have the possibility to get really great pictures, because colors look nice, exposure. Like I said, the autofocus makes it just a little bit slower, and the focus there, or the shutter therefore just isn't always that fast, but potentially a really great camera. If they put some more optimization in, especially the focus, things would be nice. And if you use tap to focus, you will get that without any issues. Now, I think for most surprising for people will be that the oldest ones have the best cameras, in my opinion, because here would be the Nova, and I especially like the pics outside, because so great saturated colors, great sharpness, autofocus worked absolutely brilliant, exposure was nice, and pretty much all pics turned out great. Very nice, pleasant colors. I really like the outcome, what I see here, so I'm actually almost blown away. I did not expect it to be good, but every time I see those pics, and also my old ones from my first time I had this, I'm kind of shocked. And but pretty much on par with that one would be the P10 Lite, because I don't know why, but those pictures are so pleasant to me, because as you can see, nice sharpness, great amount of detail, exposure seems very natural, absolutely great pictures, and the focus worked well. Of course, maybe low light capabilities are weaker, so I have to just take it to that. I really like that. So I would already say let's get to the video just real quick, because I won't really show it off. That would just make this review even more so weirdly long than it already is. We are already at over half an hour. Now, here the last place goes to the P10 Lite, just because it has only 1080p. It's not a super sharp one, but autofocus and so on would be quite nice, but it's noticeably weaker than the rest. Then the Huawei Nova, also not the sharpest picture, but a little bit, actually not bad, but yeah, let's just leave it as it is. The Honor 8 also, for some reason it felt pale. The autofocus was not amazing, but quite good, and it just didn't seem as sharp when we didn't have 4K. Then the Samsung Galaxy A5 2017, I like that. Also, maybe not super sharp because no 4K, if I didn't maybe get that wrong, but not super sharp, but autofocus worked nice, colors and everything felt quite good, so I really like that. Then the Nubia Z11 Mini S, I really liked that video because it had 4K. It was a little bit jittery, but that was maybe due to the light conditions. I couldn't test it today, and I really liked that outcome, so a very highly nice and capable camera. Then the Moto G5 Plus, I have to say from these phones that I have here, the nicest video, because autofocus worked well, contrast, overall, if we had 4K, that one was the best. So I guess you want to know who is the total winner. And actually, I won't really call out one, and I'm actually a little bit surprised, because whenever I started this comparison, I always said it would be the Honor 8. But if you see now all my ratings, the Honor 8 actually is pretty much never on top. It's almost very high. But for example, if we quickly go through once again, design, it's second place. On display part, it's the third place. Then on speakers, it's kind of in the middle as well. Headphone jack a little bit backward. On performance part, there it's absolutely on top. Battery, it's also a little bit further behind already, but with the weakest. Software as well. Selfie's not that great. So This is the phone that I always recommend to everyone at around $350, and I still think it is, because it just feels premium and everything is on a very consistently good level. And as I said, if I say this is the weakest one of them, this is so close. These are minor details, and just being maybe fourth or third all the time, but that consistently could still get you to the top. So this one I still can easily recommend, because overall qualities are super nice, even though, like I said, it's maybe not turning out to be the best at single one. But this one, okay, very, very high top, but still highly can recommend. It's kind of my secret winner here, but okay, let's just randomly talk a little bit about the rest here. The Huawei P10 Lite. I like the design a lot. I love the display. The speaker is very good, and so in these three departments it already knows to deliver. Like I said, performance, the weakest one, but just because it's not the most snappiest one and a little bit sluggish, but very smooth and overall absolutely doing the job. So even though it's weakest, this doesn't make or break anything. The battery life was not maybe amazing, but absolutely good. Software is what it is. And the camera, especially for photos, surprised me quite a lot. Then we have the Huawei Nova. That one, easy winner, for example, in terms of design. It has still a beautiful display, a loudspeaker, which is nice. It has amongst the better ones in terms of performance, so I really like that. Battery life is great no matter what. Software is what it is, once again, EMUI. Camera, I also really like that for pictures. And for video, maybe not quite so much, but yeah, still a top phone. Then the Moto G5 Plus. Like I said, for a price of around $200 in the US, this is kind of an absolutely great one, even though that one, let's quickly check where that one appeared in my rating. Last in terms of design, last in terms of display. So here it noticeably falls apart for people where that is important. Then in terms of sound, in the middle, but actually nice since front fine. Performance on the better ones, below the two best ones with the Honor 8 and the Samsung, so still absolutely top-notch performer. I could easily use this as my daily driver without any issues. When I know I feel people have issues when I say top-notch, I mean top-notch for what it is, for this price range. This is top. Then battery, here it's number one, with maybe about the Nubia Z11 Mini S, so makes a great job here. Then in terms of software, for a lot of people this will be maybe make or break, actually a make thing, because everyone likes stock Android with the features and so on. It's a clean, minimal one with nice updates, so yeah. Camera, in terms of selfies, it's in the middle, but like I said, this was very, very close, and this one knows to make really great ones. For photos, also very great if you can get past the autofocus thing, and maybe it will get even improved. Video, actually the best one. So as you can see, this one in the first category is like design and display, maybe not the very best one, but it definitely covers up or catches up in terms of battery life, performance, camera, and software. And for everyone who likes that, for who that is important, this is kind of great overall, super solid all around, and that's how I called it in my review. Now, the kind of last one, but not the worst one, definitely not, is the A5 2017, because quickly let's get to that in check. What did I say here? In terms of design, it was kind of in the middle. In terms of display, it was pretty much on top. So in this department, all very good. Speaker, still absolutely good enough, absolutely no issues, but the weakest one here. Then headphone jack, actually the best one once again. Did I actually cover headphone jack? I maybe have, no, I did talk about it. Then performance, I would actually say this is still the best one. Maybe on par with the Honor 8, but I definitely like the performance a lot. And this is kind of a very, 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 very close to flagship performer. Battery life also in the middle, but better than the other ones. The first, the least worst, the least, the not so good ones. You get it. So actually really good, especially on mobile data. Actually with 5.5 hours about that, knows to shine. Camera. In my opinion, the best selfie cam. I know a lot of people that would disagree, but I don't know why. In terms of video and pictures, actually not that great. I guess the lack of OIS could have something to do with that. And in my comparison between the A5 2016, it actually kind of lost against its older brother. Maybe because of the OIS. Could be. Video in the middle once again. So this one has the benefit of being a Samsung phone, quite popular, therefore build quality is great and it feels great, performance is great and so on. So it also knows to not lose out on anything. But I know this is maybe not the conclusion that everyone wants to, because there is no clear favorite winner, and especially something like the Honor 8 that I thought at first would be that, doesn't turn out to be that. But that actually shows exactly what I always say. Whenever I get asked which phone should I buy in this price range between these, everyone just says which one, this or that, with this and that. And which one is the best, which one is that. And I always say there is no best phone, and I think this comparison showed it the best. There is always a best one for you, because you know pretty much where every phone ranks now. You know this is on this part, this on this part. Maybe I will make a spreadsheet to show off which one is which, but you now know where one fits. And then you just take the categories which are the most important ones for you, where the phone stacks up, and then you know it, of course, along with the price and so on. And if that doesn't answer your question which one you should get between those, then I don't really know. And just real quick, because before I forget, that the Z11 Mini S, that one is also very high up on top, but as I said, I couldn't really try it, but I love the design, even though it was a little bit wider, but very great build quality. Fingerprint reader not so great, very good display. Speaker maybe not great, performance though absolutely top. Battery life was amongst the very best with the Moto G5 Plus. I liked the software a lot, and I definitely still liked the camera, even though back then when I reviewed it, the weather wasn't all so good. So I can't really say anything more than I did. You know which one is best in which category. Now the rest that you have to do is make of that what you want, because I think I was fair enough. And especially since I myself can't really choose a winner. Now, if you would ask me which one would you buy personally for you, it's really not easy, because I think I would go for the Honor 8, because I still like the display, the performance and so on, and actually, but then again, I would also almost take the A5 even more so, because I think it feels just about as good. The fingerprint readers, though a little bit annoying. The camera isn't so important for me, but it has the better battery life, but the performance isn't not always that consistent, so I'm also not quite so sure here. If the Nova wouldn't have the issue with Swift key, that one actually could be my winner, because this is the only thing that really annoyed me, because in terms of design, unbeatable, and the overall qualities were already on a really high level, besides the headphone jack and so on, and really great pictures. So I think, if you would ask me honestly, if not for the Swift key issue, that is just a personal thing for me, this would be my perfect one, because it feels so great and the rest is great. But even, for example, maybe that could sound in this review or comparison like the weakest one, the P10 Lite. Even that one I would enjoy really lot, because I like the design, I love the display, like I said, the speaker is great, performance is not amazing, it falls a little bit behind the rest here, but even that one is still good enough, besides the sluggishness factor, that's a tiny one, and camera is great and so on. So as you can see, for about $300 you have, or 300 euros, no matter where you are, or depending on where you are, maybe this comparison made it even harder to choose, but I really let that up for you. Let me actually know if this comparison was helpful and for which one you would then go for, and if anything else is there, leave that in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this extremely long, XXL long video, and maybe leave it a thumbs up and a like, a lumps up. Okay, until next time, bye. I made it in one take, and actually my bottoms hurt, because you don't know what of a crappy chair I use not to have a rest on the back. But yeah, okay, until next time, bye.